Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to week 6 of summer camp. I can't believe it is week 6 already. The time has flown. But we're going to talk about implementation strategies for groups and across campus today. As always, just a quick hello from me. My name is Rachel Cruzel. I'm the Territory Sales Director here at TextHelp, supporting higher ed kind of in the Midwest region. I've got my contact information up here, so feel free to reach out with questions, or as always, you can reach out to your rep if you have specific things that you want to ask us. Before we get going, I'm going to run through the housekeeping items. I'm sure I sound like a broken record as these are the same every week, but want to go through it just in case you have not heard me talk before or are just joining us for the series. But you're all on mute. If you do have a question, feel free to throw it into either the questions or the chat box. I'll check them kind of intermittently throughout our time together today. Likewise, I can unmute you if you'd prefer to speak. So know that that is an option. You'll get a recording link for the webinar. I typically send those out by end of business, same day, so watch for that sometime later today, as well as that compilation document with all of the slide deck links, all of the recordings, all the resources, etc. That being said, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about how do you get a tool like Read&Write or Equatio to your campus, and then once it's there, how do we actually get the word out? How do we get people to kind of buy in, get excited, want to use the tool? And then we're going to wrap up today and talk some about resources to kind of help you roll all of this out. We've got a small but mighty group of us today. I know that there are some colleges out there that have already started. It is prep mode. So for those of you that are here, if you have thoughts, things that you've tried, you want to kind of pipe in ideas, feel free to do so. I'd love to hear any ideas that you all have. I always, like I've said before, I learn from all of you. I get ideas from you, and then we can bring it to everyone else. So feel free to hop in, provide feedback, suggestions, ideas, etc. As we go through today. So a couple things before we get going. Even if you've already implemented the tool, I think this is a really great session just to kind of get you thinking. This session is going to be a good reminder for you of some of the things that you can do to really get the word out on campus. Every new year there are newbies on campus. You've got new faculty, new staff, new students every year. And you might want to renew that interest or kind of get renewed energy around the tool. And so this can kind of get you thinking today of what's something new that I can try to get the word out, or, oh, I haven't tried that before, let's try this. In addition, when we talk a little bit more about kind of making a case to get a tool brought to campus, well, you might say, you know what, Rachel, I already have the tool on campus. Why would we talk about this? Budgets are tight. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. But every year you're undergoing kind of that budget cycle of needing to make a case for what you have on your campus. And so kind of remembering what, and how to make a case can be beneficial just to kind of tighten that up and make sure that you can continue to use tools that your students are finding beneficial. And this same process, these same steps could be used not just for our tools, but any other sort of AT tools that you're going to try to bring to campus for students. So just know that these kind of theories and strategies can kind of apply kind of to anything that you want to bring to your office. So let's start by talking about making the case. So kind of taking a step backwards, whether this is bringing the tool on board for, brand new for campus, or if you're just kind of renewing interest in the case, let's kind of break that down. So as I said, budgets, we're going to talk about these first because these always seem to be kind of at the forefront of what it is that we're talking about in higher ed. And clearly this is more evident than ever right now. I know in my 10 years of working in higher education, budgets were always very critically looked at, and given everything going on right now with on and off campus, hybrid, money being very tight, it's being scrutinized more than ever. In order to get a piece of that pie, a lot of times you're needing to provide a lot of data to whoever it is that the decision makers are. And so that's something that I really can't hit home enough. Data, data, data. If you can find data to support your cause, people are more willing to listen. They're more willing to take a second look at something and really buy into what you're trying to bring to campus. The other thing to kind of think about is this a tool that could actually quote unquote kind of save your campus money? So in the long run, would you retain more students, which would potentially bring in more revenue, for example, even just a couple students? Every student's important, but can we support students and is that going to help them? But also, at the end of the day, colleges and universities are a business. There is a bottom line. And so a lot of people, especially at that administrative and leadership level, are looking at budgets. Is there another place where you can kind of save money? Is there no need for proctors if you pull in a tool like ours? We've talked about that a couple times throughout our 6 weeks together. Can you implement a piece of technology saving money on human costs, and does that kind of equal itself out? And or we've also talked a little bit about time converting documents. Are you needing to spend as much time? Can you just kind of plug and play with documents? Things like that. So just kind of thinking about that holistically. How can we kind of work that budget a little bit in our favor, and really try to prove that this is going to help us, and it's not just going to spend us money. Now, one of the things I talk a lot about with educators in higher ed, especially when it comes to requesting support in the way of resources, money, products, etc., is we have this kind of poverty mindset in education, not just higher ed, K-12 and higher education. We're taught and told countless times that there's no money, there's no resources, you need to do less with more. And while that's true, at the end of the day, there are actually resources for things that matter on your campus, things that people have made a case for. And at the end of the day, if it's going to support students, it's probably going to be more likely to be listened to and potentially kind of bought into. So those are things to kind of think about. It just takes some advocacy and being willing to kind of fight. Um, you know, no one's boss is going to be happy that I'm saying this, but no shouldn't always mean no in higher ed. A lot of times we're told no because, again, we're kind of fed that from the top that there's no money, but there are actually pots of money out there. And while it might not be through kind of your general budget, there might be some kind of creative ways, and we're going to talk about that of how you can get money. So just kind of flipping that mindset. And this is something that I've talked with countless professional staff in higher education about. It's kind of this mindset that there's nothing for us. We have to kind of do with what we have. When if we spent some time really fighting, we can actually see results. I've actually thought about doing some conference sessions or even webinars on this topic just because it's something that's just so prolific. And I have conversations with colleagues about this all the time. So kind of think about that. Kind of think about the fact that, you can kind of fight a little bit. You can actually ask for what you want, especially if you're seeing a need for students on campus. So when you get to that point of saying, you know what, we want to bring something to campus, or, we need to continue to have this tool on campus because it is so vital, you'll want to make sure that you kind of pull a rationale together. What is it that's going to make people want to buy into this? What is going to speak to those stakeholders, those decision makers on campus? And one of the things that I've found from my own personal experience doing this work for 10 years, as well as talking with countless people in the field, is a lot of times if you can tie it to bigger picture things on campus, you're more likely to get that buy-in. And this is really true over time. So many campuses, every campus has some type of a strategic priority, strategic plan. So if you can tie it into that and frame your request that way, you're more likely to get buy-in. So what are the priorities on your campus? Is it retention? Is it student support? I know, from my second year working until about year 7, retention was kind of all the buzz. It's still there. Absolutely. But, that's a huge piece of it. We want to retain students. We want to graduate them. So will this tool help that process? Is it student support? We want students to feel supported. And now more than ever, with so many schools doing hybrid or fully online, students need that support. They need that extra kind of oomph to keep them going and to help them. A lot of schools, innovation is key, especially if you use some type of a tech program on campus, maybe some type of a, D1 type school, public university where innovation is key. Can you tie it into those initiatives, something technology related, accessibility, things like that? The sky's kind of the limit here. It's just a matter of kind of looking at your campus and saying, how does this fit? How does this fit into kind of the bigger things? So kind of taking a step forward a little bit, kind of a bigger dive into these strategic priorities. You know, mission and vision statements are really key. Um, Either as a campus or even a lot of offices are required to have their own mission and vision statement on a campus. I know that at both institutions that I've worked at, we tied information to these priorities and it was more likely to be seen. We were able to do that within our office as well. You know, if we can tie it to places, sometimes that carries more weight. And really, when you're kind of pulling this together, it's really tying languages. So, you know, if you have a mission statement, pulling out some of that language and saying, this tool fits that mission statement, or this tool fits the vision statement. Or if you have sort of values or philosophies, even I know that the second institution I worked at, we had like 10 of those. Basically, it's kind of what led our institution. If you can tie it in there, just going to help make that case that much stronger. So, for a lot of schools, in order to get any traction to move forward, there needs to be some type of a proposal. Sometimes I've heard it called a rationalization document. And essentially, what it's going to do is it's going to lay out all the information for the decision makers, whether that's someone like your boss, whether that's someone like at a provost level, whether it's something at a board level, technology, kind of doesn't matter. But it's really going to help you argue your case and lay it all out in a way that makes it easy to digest and help them understand why it is that you're needing this. Why are you asking? Why does it deserve time and attention in some of that piece of the pie, especially when it comes to budget money? And again, I mentioned data, making sure that it's data driven. I think that's huge. You know, can you provide numbers? Can you provide case studies? Can you provide, we tried this tool and it worked really well. And sometimes you can even tie this to things like institutional research. They are a asset on your campus if you have one. There's typically someone in charge of doing research, counting numbers, doing some type of understanding of where students are at, where the institution is at for things. So being able to go to them and saying, hey, we've got this idea. We want to bring this tool. We want to tie it to retention and student support. And can you work with me to get some data on students? They are happy. That's their job, is to kind of have that information and to report it out in different ways. And this is someone that you can partner with on campus to kind of help you along. And we're going to talk more about partners in a little bit, but not always, having, the nitty gritty numbers of, does this tool work and what's a percentage, but, who on our campus can benefit from this, things like that. And then also thinking about nearby schools to yours. Are there other schools using a tool, using a similar tool? Is it working? Is it not? Do they like it? Things like that. So adding that information in can really be key to help kind of give you that picture of what it is that this tool is, what it does, how can it support, and really help move you forward with this. So what I actually did this spring when I got into this role was actually created kind of some documents like that. I ended up calling it kind of benefits and supports of Read and Write. It's kind of a idea of what one of these would look like. And basically, again, it's going through what are the benefits, where does it work, who does it support, things like that. And these really can be tailored. I know some campuses have these already laid out. Others, it's basically whatever you want to kind of make it look like. It's up to you. But again, just kind of thinking about what is it that this tool is? What do I need to convey? The one that I made is pretty robust, having a lot of information in it. But you can also create one that's kind of just a 1 or 2 pager that's got the high level bullet points. What is it that someone needs to see and know if they just had a couple seconds to look at that? If they're trying to figure out what is it that this is, we're comparing it with other tools on campus, we need to create some type of a decision of yes or no. How do we get there? So that's just an idea of kind of what that looks like. Okay. Now, I mentioned budgets being key, and that is true more than ever. If for some reason there is no money on campus, you are told no really does mean no from kind of the general budget. There are different ways to kind of get some creative funding sources. And this was actually what kind of funded our tech initiative at the first school I worked at. was before I even got there, we actually had a partnership with Advancement, and we had a donor who was able to support our efforts through an endowed fund. There are lots of people who want to give money, or at least there were lots of people prior to about 5 or 6 months ago who wanted to give money to schools, and there are still people that want to do that as through philanthropy. And so it might just be something of where you need to partner with your advancement or your institutional advancement, the the money makers, quote unquote, on campus, the fundraisers, to get somebody kind of who's interested in your dream or your vision. And a lot of times, advancement, they're always looking for projects. They're always looking to pitch things. They're always looking for creative solutions because there are so many varied different donors and interests out there. They just need to know about it. And a lot of times they won't know until you come to them. So it's simply getting a meeting with someone within their office saying, this is our initiative. This is what we want to do, and they're going to ask for kind of information from you. What does it look like? What types of tools? What are the dollar amount? Things like that. But they will then kind of put one pagers together, or when they talk with donors, it'll kind of be on the forefront of their mind. And I know when I've worked with them, they've always thanked me and said, this is really great that we've come to us with this, because it gives us more ammunition to find a donor who can help you. If we don't know about you, we can't do that. Within these office, there are some people that focus on just individuals, but then also, is there a company in your state, in your town, who might have similar interests to do kind of like a corporate sponsorship as well? I know that some schools do that. A lot of times they're kind of big money gifts, a lot of times that kind of make an impact. But is there something that kind of aligns with a company, or maybe even just a small company that's wanting to give back somehow to the community or to the institution that you might have a good partnership with? And again, your advancement office would know. Another way to kind of get creative with funding is applying for a grant. So more than likely, there's someone either in your advancement office or similar type office on campus that's doing grant writers. They're there to create and write grants. So again, it's just getting a meeting with them, talking about what you're looking for, and then typically they're the ones who are going out there and reviewing grants and saying, eventually, we found one. Let's meet. Let's get this together. I worked with, again, grant writers on campus as well when I was there to kind of bump up our level of service for students. So just know that, no doesn't always mean no. There are creative ways to find funding. Some other offices I've worked with talk about using some federal funds, especially if you're like a community or a state college, using Perkins grants. Sometimes you can use if your office is allocated funds or your campus is allocated funds. I know that, sometimes on campus, there are kind of creative grants that you can apply for, or money from pots, depending upon it, to kind of bring innovation on campus. So it's just kind of being open to those ideas, seeing what's out there. The opportunities that are available to those of you on campus. At the first institution I worked with, student government had quite a bit of funding every year. They were heavily funded for initiatives and projects, and they actually would take in suggestions from the campus community on things that would impact students. And one of the years I worked there, they actually had a large sum of money at the end of the year, looked at what could be done on campus, and they actually supported some physical accessibility initiatives. So do they have a funding stream that you can kind of partner with and talk with and see if that's another way to get funding? Obviously, all of this takes kind of some time and planning and research, but if it's something that you're passionate about, if it's something is going to support students, it can't hurt to spend that time to kind of look and get creative, especially if it's all it takes is an outreach and maybe a half hour, an hour meeting with someone like advancement, and then they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, or working with those grant writers, etc. So let's talk about some stakeholders and partners. I've mentioned some of them since we've been talking, but let's take a step back and actually look at who kind of are those strategic partners, both when you're trying to bring things to campus, but then as if and when it does come to campus or you're trying to get the word out, who can you kind of partner with to help you get the word out? So You're not in this alone. I know that so many disability resource offices, accessibility resource offices are one person offices, or you're very short staffed. You feel like you're kind of on this island by yourself. But one of the things I've always been big on when in this work is, you're not alone. There are tons of people on your campus that are looking to partner, that are excited to do something different from their day-to-day work, and want to do something, especially it gives them some type of interaction with students. So the question I always want to ask people is, who else can you partner with? Who else might have students who kind of would have a stake in this tool? For example, who else might want something like this on campus? When you start to look at it kind of that way, kind of as a, who can I partner with? Who can, help me with this dream of mine or this process of mine? You can start to see that, then there's more budget money because there's kind of more people involved. Maybe there becomes more rationalization to buy. If I partner with another office, it's not just me asking, there's two of us. So kind of that, there's power in numbers type of thing. I've had, being in this role, multiple people from the same institution reach out, connect them to one another, and all of a sudden you've got three, four, five, six people saying, hey, we've got some movement here, some excitement about it. And eventually you'll get kind of that critical mass where people will kind of listen, gets you a bigger impact. In addition, it's going to help you share the work as well. If you're doing this all in your own, it's going to be 100% of the work. But if you can bring in two, three other people, it starts kind of dropping down to 50% of the work, or 33% of the work, or 25% of the work. So, this project that seems like it's kind of daunting and that you don't have the ability to do it, many hands make light work, as the saying goes. Can you bring people in to help you get to where you're going? And this also comes with the implementation process as well. Who else can you have help you get the word out on campus for students? So who are some of these people on college campuses that can help with that? I mentioned retention and student success right off the bat today, and that's extremely true. Their job, the individuals in these roles, 100% on getting students to stay, to persist, to be retained semester after semester, year after year. So this is more than likely going to be right up their alley, especially again, if you can kind of divide the money, conquer, etc. Student support offices, and those are varied all the time. Every campus looks a little different. At my first institution, we had cultural advisors. So every different, various culture that our students came from. Pan Asian, for example, they had someone who worked with them. Can we reach out to them and have them be an advocate to their students? Can they be the direct route to their students? Veteran support, really key. Trio, McNair scholars, athletics, anyone who's in charge of online learning right now. This is key. I know they have a lot on their plate. I already mentioned institutional assessment, institutional research, sometimes IA or IR, as their acronym. Either of those, again, can help you with getting data, getting information. You have English learners on campus. English is a second language. I know at my second institution I worked at, we had someone who actually did courses for students who were learning English, and they thought this was great because it was a tool that was able to help their students progress and be interactive and help them learn the language. For sure, programming, we're going to talk a lot about this in a little bit, about being key for helping get the word out. Obviously, disability accessibility resources. If you are not in that office, if you are coming on as bringing this tool in from a different office, but there's someone who you can talk with and partner with, we do see non-disability accessibility resources being kind of the outreach and the catalyst for bringing it to campus. So know that they're key on this as well. English departments, educational departments. We saw, people in our education department who are teaching teachers, either special ed or, teachers, future teachers being in classes for students with special needs. A lot of times that's what it's kind of called on campuses. Those students are learning about technology. Maybe they would want to kick in some money so their students get some hands-on experience with this tool. And then human resources as well, especially from an employee accommodation perspective. So you might have to think a little outside the box to try to figure out, okay, who can I partner with? And again, there's sort of that success in numbers idea. So get creative, make friends, coffee, even just walking meetings, or just, picking up the phone and calling people. Um, can really get you far with this. So now let's talk about actually getting the word out. What are some strategies for getting either for campus, a group of students in your office who might be using it? And before we get going, just a couple little things that I've noticed. The key is every school is different. Every school looks different, the way it's run is different, the structure is different. And as a result, the strategies that are going to work well for your school may not be the exact same strategies that work well for somebody else. And so I don't necessarily have kind of the magic bullet or the silver bullet today to kind of say this is how you should do this. The key is just knowing the landscape of your institution, again, knowing who those key players are, if there's influencers on your campus that are well regarded on campus that you can partner with to help you. So maybe just taking a step back and saying, okay, what does my campus look like? What gets traction? What have I seen work well or not so well? And then kind of focusing in on that on your own campus. So, as I've said, can you partner is always a question once you start wanting to do kind of the outreach and implementation and getting the word out. Are there those other departments that can help you? Can you create alleys to help spread the word with the students they worked with? I've mentioned some of those offices. Can you partner with the veteran service office on campus or veteran support office, and can they work directly with their students as opposed to you having to do that? They're probably already going to have some clout, some respect from that person on campus, as opposed to just someone else from the office you work in coming in trying to get some traction, getting the word out. A lot of times when you do this type of outreach, it's going to have to be strategic, it's going to have to be super intentional, and probably frequent as well to kind of get this moving. Kind of off the ground. Some ideas sometimes have been things like emails. I've heard people put flyers on people's doors, maybe even goodie bags, kind of getting creative, having something tactile. Emails can very easily get skipped over, but if there's something left outside an office on a door, again, this was all when we were on campus. So this might be something that you're going to have to kind of adjust and rethink a little bit right now. But just something to kind of keep in the back of your head if and when we're all kind of back on campus again someday. So, what can you do to kind of get that buy in, get that person to get excited about working with you on this? One of the things I learned very quickly is that the students that we had on campus were really sometimes our best advocates. And this is something that I've heard a lot of times from schools I work with and partner with both now and prior to coming to Text Help. There are a bunch of different ways to get students involved. It gives them great leadership experience, it's great resume building, but also I've learned that students sometimes tend to listen a little bit better to students than adults on campus. Some of the creative ways I and other schools have done this have been tabling on campus. Again, when we were on campus, or now, can you do virtual tabling somehow? Students are there, they can demo the product, they can show it, answer questions. Can you get students who are currently using the tool, either connected on your office or just generally across campus, who can be there to kind of walk students through this and kind of decrease that stigma? If they see an adult there, maybe they're not going to be as excited to come up and talk to you. But if there's students who are clearly having a good time and are excited and are engaging, students might be more apt to kind of stop by and say, well, what is this? Tell me more. Student government and student leadership is another great avenue that you can go. Presenting at one of their meetings, getting on that agenda was a really key turning point for one of our implementations at the first institution I had. Downside was it took until April one academic year to get on that agenda. However, once these students saw it, they were impressed by it. They wanted to get the word out. I was approached walking through campus, asking, my students asking questions about it. So and so, my roommate is on student government, and they said, to come by this office and to hear more about this tool. These students are leaders for a reason, and if you task them with wanting to advocate for something that they know is going to support their peers, they're going to do it. They are going to have that excitement around it, and again, bring that to the student body. A lot of offices that I see who are excited and have bought into the tool, disability accessibility resources, student support, trio, they'll actually have student leaders within the office, either as sort of tech allies or tech trainers. Again, that same type of idea of that, these students have a little bit more clout, and they've also got time, especially if you have things like student employee hours that you can pay students for student study work study. This is something that's a really great way to do that, especially if you don't have time to meet with students. I'm going to set you up with John, for example, and he's going to walk you through how to do this next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Or feel free to pop in. Our tech allies have open office hours where you can come in and learn about this tool, and they'll kind of walk you through how it works, etc. So another great way to utilize students. Student success stories, this is another big one. If students can hear from their peers of what went well, they like this tool, that's going to take things super far as well. Can you do something like create a video of students who have used the tool with kind of their voices? Can you do some type of case study on your campus with your students saying, this has worked really well, this is why you should use it as a student? Again, might take some time, might need to partner with some people on campus to get these things done. But again, if you can find the right students, this is going to take you super far. Because again, students really are your best advocates in a lot of ways. So if you yourself, your office, or you and your partners are going to try to get the word out, just to kind of get things out in more of a printed way, there's some ideas to do that. First and foremost, you can always try to send out emails. I know at one institution of mine, we did kind of an email campaign that we pulled together that we are trying to get off the ground, to kind of, things like offices or our partner offices, to give them a heads up to try to kind of get that initial buy-in. You can send it to things like the student body as a whole. Some students will read it, some won't, but you're at least getting something in front of some of those students. Students within a particular office, if you're working within the disability resource office, feel free to, send it to your own students, and, someone in the veteran service office, if you can give them a template, for example, they can send it to their students. They recognize the name of the person, might be more apt to open it, for example. Another idea is flyers, kind of old school, and again, more of a tactile way of doing it when you are on campus. A little bit more challenging now, but you can either post the flyers or you could also potentially email it. So kind of having it jazzy, making it engaging, exciting, having a catchy kind of email title, subject line, etc., can get people excited to kind of open that email. Couple ways to get the word out on the web that I've seen. Websites with landing pages with information can be really key. So if you can make friends with someone maybe in your web development, or if you have some type of freedom over your own website, creating a page with information, what the tool does, maybe getting some guides for how it works, the installers, maybe some how-to videos, and then, who on campus can help the student if they do have questions, things like that. So kind of having that information all in one spot so students can go and find out more information. Another way of doing this is embedding it in your learning management system. I know some schools do it that way, kind of on a main page or a tech page of their learning management system if they don't do it on their main website. Again, it kind of depends on what works for your school and kind of the way that your structure is. And what I've got up here is actually a picture of North Dakota State University's learning management system, information about Read and Write. So they've got it up here, who is it for, what's the type of license, how to get it, things like that. And they actually have information here about, it's on our software download site. How this works obviously is different for every school, so you'll just probably want to talk to whoever's in charge of your web or your tech to see if this is something that you could do. But again, it kind of gives students a place to go to have all of the information on this software tool topic, etc. Now, I mentioned first year programming as being a really key way and a gateway really to get information out. So focusing on the newbies on campus can be a really great way to get this information going. Orientation and new student week can be a really great place to start with this. If you're willing to kind of, do some of these outreach pieces here and there, but then being really kind of intentional for students right when they get on campus and kind of over a few year time span, you'll eventually be able to kind of pull everyone into this. And if you can kind of embed it in this time, you're probably going to get a lot of bang for your buck if you can get some precious time during orientation or new student week, etc. You're going to be able to get in front of all these students, talk for a few minutes, have them see what's out there. Again, a lot of times new orientation, new student week is really the only time that an incoming class is kind of all together at the same time. Again, it might take partnering, making some friends with those in charge of this, but if you can get some traction, it can be really key. Either to do something like a presentation, or even if you can't get any of that time yourself, is there somebody else who could mention the tool, at least start to kind of prime that pump? In addition, maybe throwing a flyer, quote unquote, in the bags that students get. I know a lot of schools still did that when we had orientation on campus, but if you don't have it in person, is there kind of a digital bag that they get with a bunch of flyers and information about different offices? Can you add that in there? And again, this is just an outreach, an email, a quick meeting with someone who works in kind of orientation or new student week, etc. I've seen schools have a lot of traction with freshmen or first year one-on-one classes. These classes typically meet once a week, kind of to go over student support, check in with students, how are things doing. We're going to teach you some resources on campus, and this is a great place where this can kind of all come together. Again, maybe you can get time for a presentation. If going to all of these sections is really challenging, can you create some type of engaging, exciting video for students to watch in this? Instead, even just a couple minutes going over, what it is and why it works. And again, maybe that's where you go back to those student, case studies or those student success stories that you created. You have a student narrate it. Maybe this is a fun project for someone who works in kind of your film or communications department to pull together. So getting kind of creative, who do you know and who do you know that's good at what they do and are willing to kind of be excited about something new and different on campus. Then I've also seen there be some traction around embedding the tool within freshman or first year courses. I've been working with schools lately to kind of have this conversation, or they've come up with this idea themselves where, in the English class, the faculty is going to give students the option of using this tool to read, to write. They're going to spend a few minutes going over it so that students know it's a resource. Writing classes, sometimes Library 101 when schools are going over resources for students, technology resources. Can you embed it in these places so it just kind of becomes second nature to students? It's not just this tool that they have to go get and then figure out how to use. Can you embed it in a way that, again, isn't necessarily mandatory for students because of accessibility and the varied needs of students, but is it something that can be built in as a scaffolded kind of support need for students if they choose to want to use it, to get the word out and to get some of that kind of muscle memory going with how it works. Now, kind of with that last point of, embedding it in classes is getting some kind of faculty buy-in as well. Faculty are definitely partners and allies. They definitely were in the offices I've worked in. You know who those faculty are, but those are the ones that you're going to want to try to really get in on your side to get them excited about the tool. Again, to kind of embed it into the curriculum, either subject specific or as a first year, or even just a general kind of heads up. They're the ones typically, if a student doesn't kind of come forward right away saying, I need support, they're the ones that are seeing students who might be struggling on campus. And they're the ones who a lot of times will say, hey, I'm seeing this. Can we get you connected with these resources? And one of the resources they can suggest is a tool like Read&Write, or is a tool like Equatio, whatever it is on your campus. They see students, 3 times a week, 2 times a week, they're seeing their work, and there's someone who can definitely say, I wonder if this would be useful for students. Obviously, getting faculty to know the tool, understand the tool, how it works, what its usage is, etc., can be a challenge. But if you, again, can get some time on like a faculty workshop day to say, hey, this is what's going on, especially this year with everything moving online, if you haven't already done that, or is there something in September or October, kind of ongoing faculty development days that you can get some time on to get them to understand what's going on. Or even if that doesn't work, can you send an email out to faculty? Again, those campus partners, can you get some information out to them? Now, I've mentioned kind of who on campus are good people to help you with some of this work, but one of the departments I haven't talked about has been marketing. Marketing, their whole job is to get the word out on things on campus. Their job is to market things. And so this is one place that I always hear people have underutilized. They don't think about going to marketing to help out with this, but this is their job. They take on projects to get the word out and get, things moving. And they're somebody who can really help take the load off and can kind of pull things together in a fun, jazzy, exciting way. Maybe they can make some email templates for you so that you can send things out to students. Can they create flyers for you, especially if you're not artsy or graphical when it comes to creating something? Can they help you with the website? Is there someone on their team that does websites? Is that where web development lives, for example? Can they get videos together for you? Things like that. So it's really just figuring out who is it um, in that department who's willing to kind of sign on or get on board with this. And again, it might just take a meeting, an email outreach, a phone call, but normally they're pretty excited to help you because that's what they get to do all day. They're all about that creativity and that kind of fun, different outreach to campus to ultimately help campus, become better. So they're a really great place to look at. IT is another great partner that I haven't mentioned as well. Obviously, if you're bringing on a technology tool, they're probably someone that you're going to want to connect with, not just from kind of like the nitty gritty, hey, we're bringing this tool on board, but more so, they're probably going to be able to provide some insight and getting the word out on campus. How do they get the word out? How would they suggest it? Not just to staff, not just to faculty, and not just to students, but these different audiences. What have they found that's worked? What hasn't worked? Students maybe don't read their emails super often, but faculty, that's a really great way, type of thing. Or you know what? We've done digital signage boards, for example, when people were on campus, and those tend to get us traction. So they probably have some kind of an idea of what they can help you with. And I can't even begin to describe all the creative ways IT can help or ideas they have, things like that, what resources they have to help you. So again, it might just be a phone call, an email, and a couple-minute chat with them to say, this is my vision, this is what we're doing. Do you have any suggestions or things that they can do? And again, a lot of times IT people that I've worked with at my institution, there's a couple of them that are super creative and excited and want to tackle projects, something different than kind of the day to day. And so they're happy to kind of walk you through and see what they can do to help out, especially if it's around technology. All right. So one of the kind of exciting ways to partner with marketing or to kind of get the word out is something called viral marketing. And if you don't know what viral marketing is, it's essentially kind of a catchy, exciting marketing initiative. And this is where you might have to kind of pull marketing in to help you out. But uh, essentially what you're looking to do is kind of create a huge impact. You want to get a lot of buzz, a lot of excitement, a lot of people talking about this and doing something kind of out there. So, is there something that you can do on your campus that is really fun and exciting? Um, the kind of most exciting version of this that I've heard actually comes from my colleague here in Minnesota. TextHelp heard about this a few years ago, and we've actually passed this on to quite a few schools. I haven't heard of anyone else doing this. The last institution I was at, our school colors were purple, similar to Read&Write's kind of colors. So we were going to start this process, and then I ended up hopping on board here at the company. But essentially, what St. Mary's University did of Minnesota, Karen and her team there, shout out to her, is they needed something to get excitement around this tool and they needed to get something built super fast. And so she and her team came up with this idea of going to the dollar store or going to kind of Goodwill and getting puzzles essentially. Went to the hardware store, got purple spray paint and took these puzzle pieces and spray painted them in purple and then left them strategically across campus in different places. They had things on the wall with purple puzzle pieces. The whole campus was just littered with purple puzzle pieces, and it got people talking. She had met with people on campus. I know when we were starting this process on our campus, we met with people like marketing to make sure that this was okay to do. Make sure that the janitorial staff, custodial staff doesn't clean up the purple puzzle pieces because we want them there. But what happened is it got campus talking. Everyone said, "What's up with these purple puzzle pieces? Why are they all here?" And eventually, then she sent out an email to the entire student body with the title that was Purple Puzzle Pieces. And it got people again to open up their email because of that kind of viral excitement around it. It was the buzz of campus when she's talked about this. So, this is something that you obviously can do with pretty little money, 20, 25, $30 and supplies and resources to get the word out. And it really took off on their campus. And now everybody talks about it and uses it. So a huge thank you to Karen for sharing their exciting viral marketing story with us. Again, she said, use it, pass it on. We want people to just use the tool because we think it's so great. So, is there something creative? Is there something on your campus that you can kind of catapult off of, things like that? And it might be talking with marketing, like I said, or kind of partnering with other offices. What can you do to create buzz? How do you create that kind of maximum impact as quickly as possible to kind of get that critical mass? And that's something that I talk with schools about all the time, both now and prior, is you almost need to hit this kind of critical mass, and what that is on your campus is going to vary. But eventually you get enough buzz around the tool and it just kind of becomes second nature for people to use a tool like this. Um, so think outside the box. What is it that you kind of can do that's exciting? So, a couple tips and tricks before I leave you today. I kind of started writing the slide and I thought, word from the wise. Well, I'm not necessarily wise. A lot of this has been trial and error on both my campus and then also the campuses I've worked with, that I've talked to about this process over my last 10 years working in this field. Um, First and foremost, it's going to take some time to really get this up and off the ground. If you think you can just kind of bring a tool on board and tell a couple students and it's going to be used a lot, you're going to be sorely mistaken. Um, it is something that's going to take some time and effort. And again, that goes back to, can you kind of divide and conquer? Can you get some partners on campus that can help kind of lighten the load? Um, there really is never enough time in our work. And this is something I hear all the time when I work with schools. Rachel, there's never enough time. There's never enough time to do this. And a lot of times this kind of gets pushed to the back burner. And so what I tell people is, can you carve out time on your calendar and block it and really be intentional of not letting something push that? Student support and getting students access is something that is important. But so often I hear that technology gets bumped. So is there a way that you can really make time or make it a priority? I know this time of year is so tricky for schools, but maybe waiting a month into school, is that a good time too? And that's a strategy we actually thought about in the last office I was at. The first 4 weeks of the semester are so busy, students are just completely inundated. But is there a time where things start to kind of get into a groove, as well as for you, so that you do have a little time to get to kind of push some stuff out? The tool, like I mentioned at the beginning, is going to take some convincing and fighting for, whether that's kind of bringing it on board, whether it's renewing interest on campus, kind of fighting for that renewal every year with a tight budget cycle, and also convincing your partners and students on campus to care about this, that this is a tool that they're going to want to use. So know that, again, it's going to take some time and it's going to take some convincing. As I kind of mentioned, there's not really a silver bullet. There's not necessarily like send an email on this date and then 2 days later put a flyer out. And then, oh, by the way, 3 days later, talk to faculty. There's really not a prescriptive timeline, again, because campuses are so varied. So you're gonna have to kind of take stock and inventory of your campus. Likewise, there's not really a silver bullet to getting students to buy in as well and use the tool. You might just have to get really good at leading these horses to water and hoping that they take a sip and get excited about it. So um, talk to your peers, maybe see what's worked for them. And then I've mentioned data twice already. 3 time is hopefully the charm today, but data really is your friend. Data Desk is available to all of you. We talked about Data Desk earlier in our time together during week 1, I believe. So if you don't remember what Data Desk is, head back to week 1, look at that slide deck, watch that recording piece. Essentially what it is, it's a way for you to look at the data of usage on your campus. It was just for Google users. We recently rolled out it for Microsoft, so it's available for everybody now. If you're using the Google version or the version that works within Google Chrome, again, you can sign in with your Google or your Microsoft, so there's no it doesn't work here or there, even though it's in Google Chrome, it does work for Microsoft users. But that way you can kind of take stock and inventory of, what happened this month, what happened month over month for our growth. Or you can just check and say, wow, we've got some low usage right now. Maybe we need to kind of see what's going on. Maybe we need to bump up that kind of implementation, that awareness building, etc. So don't forget that that's there for you to be able to access. One of the questions I get all the time too is, hey Rachel, is there data pulled for students who download it for their Windows or their Mac computer to be used on the desktop? And because that gets installed locally on a student's computer, remember, DataDesk can't get access to that. And so a lot of schools have some frustration around that. But one way kind of around that I've talked with schools about is there a way to kind of gate the installers, for example? Is there kind of an approved software list that students have access to? And both of my 2 campuses that I worked at had that. Um, some you could link it on that website maybe that you create for students that gets them information about the tool. Click here, on the, you know, software center. That's the one that we had at my last institution, and it will bring you to the installers. A lot of times you can gate that or see how many times it was clicked on. It doesn't necessarily give you how many times a student actually used the tool or once it was installed, if they actually opened it and interacted, but it gives you an idea of how many students kind of visited the page, downloaded it, etc. If you don't end up having something like that for your campus, what I've seen some schools do is kind of have a Microsoft or Google form or SurveyMonkey, something like that, linked on the page that says, are you interested in this tool? Head over here to, to sign up for access. And what it does is it simply just asks for name, email address, and then kind of any other information you're looking for, maybe class year, maybe major, um, maybe are they a Mac or are they a Windows user, kind of whatever information you want to glean. And then once they fill that out, it can be very simple or it can ask a few questions. It at that point then would send students to the link to wherever it is that it's installed, or sends to our main website where we have the most updated installers, for example, things like that. So you can kind of build it out. And again, that might be where you talk to IT and say, we want to get this data. How would we build this technologically? And they can definitely give you some information on that. So again, who can you partner with? Who can you think strategically about on campus? So those are some good ways to get data. And again, this data can help you with kind of making that case for year over year, making sure that you have access to these tools, convincing your leadership that the money is being money well spent. So as we wrap up today, just some resources to help you roll out. First and foremost, we have something on our website called the implementation pack. I'll actually show it to you. It kind of sort of follows along the lines of what I've talked about a little bit. I'll walk you through it in just a second, but gives you some kind of information about what to think about before, during, and then sort of the purchase of the tool and getting it out on campus. We do have our training portal. We talked about that during week 1. That's got resources. I've linked the resource page directly, which has guides, quick start, full start access guides, things like that, that you could pull for students that say, this is the play button and this is what it does, for example. It's also got those kind of online courses per se, the certification program that you can send people to, whether that's staff, faculty, students, etc. It's there for them. Obviously, our YouTube channel is chock full of lots of different videos that you can link to for students. We did talk more about those resources week 1. So this is kind of review a little bit. And then obviously our blog as well, just maybe having people on campus, those key partners signing up for things like the blog so that they can get more information. Now, the implementation pack, I kind of mentioned that. Essentially, it's here to get you started. So it just talks about, some of the nitty gritty, like the IT things, but There's section 3, for example, that talks about getting educators on board, or getting students on board, for example. So, there's links to the training portal and the YouTube playlist, and how do you promote widespread adoption. So some of the things I've kind of talked about, like for example, lunch and learns. I didn't even mention that today. Things like that. So just lots of different ways to get. Oops, I just zoomed in by accident and then zoomed out. But just kind of perusing through this might be something that's useful. Peer mentoring, we talked about orientation freshmen. So just something to kind of get the juices flowing as you start to roll out. All right. And then what I didn't put on here is also feel free to reach out to any of us on the team here. We're happy to kind of give you ideas, walk you through this as well. We want to make sure that you're successful with the tool at the end of the day. That's kind of key. That's what our goals are. So a couple ideas as I've always had for carrying you forward for the next week. Do you need to refresh and get the word out again this fall or this winter, for example? Check that data desk, see if you've got low usage, see what last year looked like. Maybe set goals for yourself. We had 500 users last year. We want to make that, a 10% increase. Maybe we want, 550 users, for example. Kind of create those strategic goals and see what you can do to kind of help you. Is there a different strategy you can try that you heard today that you got kind of excited about? Ooh, that's something we haven't tried. That's an office I hadn't tried partnering with. That might be somebody that I might need to make aware of this tool, for example. And then again, if you're in the process of trying to kind of make wider usage, make a case, is there someone on campus that you can partner with to get the funding? Can you partner with them to share the workload? Things like that. And then always taking stock of what your budget cycle looks like. Do you need to make a case for adopting the tool or renewal? Is there something that you can do now to kind of prep for that? I know some schools budget cycle time sometime January through March. Some schools I've talked to, they're backing all the way up to October, and they're actually doing multi-year projections. So is this something that you might have to start thinking about and really crafting kind of for longer term support over time? So just kind of thinking about that to kind of get those, again, juices flowing about, what does this look like? How do we maximize our usage? How do we make sure the most number of students are able to have access to this and use it should it be beneficial for them? Now, that being said, that brings us essentially to week 7, which is next week of summer camp. It's our last week together. I literally can't believe we are on week 7. I feel like I just blinked and I was pulling this all together for us back in May and June. But it's going to be our kickoff to back to school week. Same time, same place, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're going to talk a little bit about what the landscape for the upcoming year is. I know that a lot of that is very changing by the hour, which is clear by the news that I listened to this morning. But the key thing I want you to take away next week are what updates came to Read and Write and Equatio over the summer, what things are to come. This is a little bit harder to peg down. I can give some maybe my own thoughts and predictions, things like that. Any kind of information I can disclose and share. I'll talk to my product managers and see if there's any kind of things that I can share with you all. New resources that we've pulled together over the summer, things like that that might be beneficial for you. And then any kind of ideas for the next academic year ahead of you. This in no means is kind of our last time together. Feel free to reach out to myself or your rep if you ever have questions and things like that, and etc. But know that this is just kind of to give you kind of an hour of support as you either kicked off or as you begin to kick off. I know that some schools are already back. Many in my home state of Minnesota are yet to come. So just know that we're here to support you along the journey of this very interesting year ahead. I didn't see any questions come in throughout our time together, no chat messages. But if you do have anything, I'll obviously hang on the line for a couple minutes to see. You've got about 2 minutes back in your day, maybe about a minute and a half, but there's my information. Do reach out if you have questions. Likewise, I can connect you with your rep if you don't know who that is. But have a great rest of your Tuesday, the rest of this week, and we'll see you in just about a week for week 7 of summer camp. Thanks, everyone.